Hello, Brittany.
Hi, Rachel.
So today I wanted to talk about tariffs. I don't know if you've heard tariffs on the news a lot, but President Trump has been talking about tariffs a lot. He sings their praises. He says they're like the most wonderful thing ever. He says they're like the most beautiful thing ever. And I wanted to talk about that for a minute. First of all, what is a tariff? A tariff is like a tax that is charged when goods come into a country. So, for example, if Japan were to sell us, like to import some Toyota cars into the United States, we might charge them a tariff. It's like a little tax on everything that they bring in. So it's a tax on goods coming into a country that you pay to the country it's coming into. Does that make sense?
Yeah, if you can give me an example of like a product. So let's say I'm trying to think of something. So I absolutely love avocados. Those aren't as fun of an example I was just thinking, but those come from Mexico.
Perfect.
A lot of them come from Mexico.
Avocados from Mexico.
Let's pretend that I'm a consumer and I want to buy an avocado, but there are tariffs placed on things coming in from Mexico. How does that affect me living at home? Can you break that down a little bit?
So let's say, for example, that there's no tariff right now, or the tariff is very, very small, maybe just a few percent. I don't know what it actually is right now. But say you go to the grocery store and you see a deal on avocados, 3 for $5, right? I think I've seen that price range. I think that's realistic.
Anyway, yes.
They are, and you can never quite get them at the right time. They want to stay hard as a rock, and then all of a sudden they're ripe for like 5 seconds, and then they're mush. Yep. I have not figured out the trick to avocados. But anyway, I love them too. And so, for example, if there was a tariff placed on avocados coming in, and Trump is talking about like 25%, that's 1/4. So in
let's
theory,
just so we don't have to math. Let's just say
let's math.
For every avocado, let's say there's like a 5-cent tariff. Let's just make up a number. Or how about we say $1 or $1? Let's call it a $1 tariff every time you go to the store and you get avocados. So I'm a consumer. I'm going to the store and I'm buying these avocados. And last week there were 3 for $5. But the tariff, am I paying the tariff when I buy it at the store, or is someone else paying the tariff?
Well, it might be passed along to you. Who pays the tariff directly to the government is whoever is bringing the avocados in, but that makes them more expensive to the grocery stores and everybody on down the line. So the question is, do they absorb that and just take less profit, or do they pass it along and raise the prices of the avocados? So now it's $6 for 3 avocados.
So I want to make sure I understand this real quick, because I get so confused. So if a restaurant wants to buy avocados because they have a lot of stuff on their menu with avocados, they are the ones, if they're purchasing the avocados directly from whoever they're buying them from in Mexico, it's the restaurant that is going to have to pay that tariff. Now, it might trickle down to us, but it would be the restaurant, right?
Well, I think if the restaurant is directly importing.
Yes.
Something like that. So anyway, somebody along the chain is paying that tariff, and the avocados get more expensive because of that. If the tariff goes down, the avocados get cheaper. If the tariff goes up, they get more expensive. And Trump is thinking of doing this to Mexico, to Canada, and to China. He's proposing a 25% tariff to Canadian imports, to Mexican imports, and 10% to China. And he actually just talked about equal tariffs. So if a country charges our exports, like American goods, say if they go to France, and France charges like a 15% tariff, Trump has asked his team of economists to figure out like what the impact of that is, like all of the taxes that they charge on American goods, and charge the same amount on, like, say, French cheeses and French wines that come into the country, like an equal tariff. So a tariff is what we call a trade barrier. So it discourages trade, because if things are more expensive, you're kind of discouraged from buying them, aren't you? Because they're more, it makes something more expensive. So it's designed, I think there's a few purposes. Well, number one, it's designed to encourage Americans to buy American things. That's one of the talking points. It's to encourage people to grow avocados in, say, California or maybe Texas, and buy American avocados so you don't have to pay the tariff on Mexican avocados. So that's one thing. Certainly keeps American goods a little bit cheaper, makes them a little bit more advantageous. But what if Texans and Californians are not quite as good at growing avocados as Mexicans are? And what if the ground and the elements and the climate is better in Mexico for a more delicious avocado? Maybe if we're buying American avocados, maybe they're not as good. Possibly. Or maybe if we can't get a Toyota anymore because it's suddenly become much more expensive, maybe we have to buy American cars, and maybe that's not our favorite kind.
Yeah, so the economy is about specialization, and everybody has a very specific thing that they're good at, and that's what makes the economy so great. That's what the Miraculous Pencil is about. Everyone specializes in this one thing.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've got that book right here, and it talks about this very thing. This is a great book that explains how nobody knows how to build a pencil. And that is true. All of the elements that go into making a pencil, it's not just the wood and the rubber for the eraser and the lead for the pencil and the paint and the little metal clasp thing. All of those things have different elements that come into it from all over the world. And it takes almost the whole entire world economy coming together to make a simple pencil. And so what if we all put up trade barriers and discourage all of that coming together? That's a big problem. So a lot of people really, really, really don't like tariffs. But I happen to think that what Trump is doing is maybe a little bit more complicated and nuanced than that. I think he's using his threat of tariffs as a bargaining chip to get other countries to treat us more fairly. And that's a whole other discussion, whether you think that that's really what's going on, or if he's just being stupid. That's possible. It's possible for a politician to just be stupid. But I kind of think that it's a bargaining tool. He did write The Art of the Deal, remember? I mean, he's very good at negotiating. No matter what you think of the man, he's a good negotiator. And when he showed those countries like Mexico and Canada that he was very serious about this, and was like, okay, those tariffs are going into effect Monday. They kind of went, whoa. Let's talk about this. And he's like, okay, good. Yeah, let's talk about this. I'll give you another month before we slap the tariffs on your goods. And let's sit down and see if we can work something out. So right now, the tariffs are delayed for a little bit. As of the time of this taping, they've kind of been pushed back so that they will come to the table and negotiate. And there's some things that Trump wants in exchange for not doing the tariffs. And I think I think it's kind of the same thing with his saying that around the world, he's going to slap on reciprocal tariffs. Like, if you charge us 15%, we're going to charge you 15%. I think a lot of that is for other countries to say, oh, whoa. Well, maybe if we reduce our taxes on American goods to 10% or 5%, then Trump will do the same. And then all of our goods will be cheaper. It'll have the effect of lowering all tariffs on American goods, and maybe it'll be more fair. That's the thinking.
It's tricky. That's tricky, though.
It is tricky. It's kind of a delicate dance. It's a very complicated game.
I just keep hearing the Frederick Bastiat quote, when goods don't cross borders, armies will.
Soldiers
will. And that's what I always think of. And so it's like, even if it is a bargaining chip, is it still, an act of aggression, an act of force to use that threat? And is that alone a bad thing?
I think it matters a lot how high the tariff is. I mean, is it just 3%? That seems kind of more along the lines of how do we fund our government? And maybe this is like a not too terrible way to fund the government.
If it's like, what if they took away income tax? If we had to choose.
Yeah. If we could get rid of income tax,
that would be a different discussion.
Oh, yeah. Then a lot of people might start to agree with Trump about tariffs. But yes. I mean, that's going to raise the cost of everything, potentially. So it's so complicated. But so I think that it could have the effect of actually improving free trade. But see, here's the thing. What if you charge a tariff of like 75% or 80% or 100%? Then that, I think, is an act of aggression. I think that's kind of where you get into like the not so nice way of doing tariffs, where you get soldiers crossing borders and everybody gets shut down. I don't think that's what's happening. And then the other aspect of tariffs is that a good way to fund the government? Now, there's a lot of ways to fund the government, and there's arguments against all of them, is what I've discovered. You'll hear people say taxation is theft. Yep. But then on the other hand,
fair tax was big when back in like 2009, everyone was talking about fair tax. There was like a flat tax for everybody. Yeah, there's always been different ideas.
Yeah, like what if everybody was just charged 10% income taxes with no deductions, no nothing, just flat across the board? 10%, that's what it is. H&R Block goes out of business because taxes can be done suddenly on the back of a postcard, which when you're grown up, maybe you won't grow up to a situation that Brittany and I are in right now, where taxes are just horrendously complicated and very scary. And this time of year, I get very stressed out. We're currently in February. So people hate the income tax. People hate sales taxes when they get too high. I think our sales tax right now is not too bad, and it's different in every state. But, if it's like 4 to 6%, somewhere in that neighborhood, it's not that bad. It doesn't make you like not want to go out to eat or not buy something. Now, if sales tax doubled your bill at Walmart or at the restaurant, that might be a very different story. But it's small and you can get used to it, almost not notice it. Other taxes, there's property taxes, which you pay when you own property, like a house or something. It gets, tacked onto your, a lot of times it's tacked onto your mortgage. You pay it with your mortgage because then the bank pays the tax bill on your behalf. But anyway, and that varies from region to region. What other taxes are there? What other ways are there? There's like usage fees, like tolls for toll roads. And everybody hates them all. But I mean, the problem is if we're going to have a government and not be anarchists, we gotta fund that government somehow. I happen to think it becomes a much easier problem when the government is small and constitution sized. Then however you fund the government might not be so discouraging to economic activity. But there's a whole lot of discussion that can happen about like what's the best way to fund the government that doesn't cripple the economy, that doesn't damage families, bank accounts like the income tax can. What do you think, Brittany?
Oh my goodness. I think this could probably be a whole other episode because there's so many different ways. We might need to wrap it up here. But yeah, there's a lot of different suggestions. One way that we're seeing right now is just trying to cut the government as much as possible. So maybe those taxes go down. But like I said, we could probably do a whole separate episode on here. And I know we're running out of time for this one, but
we are.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. It's a very controversial topic right now. I want to point out before we go that, you mentioned the Tuttle Twins and the Miraculous Pencil, which is one of my favorites. But that one is great because it was inspired by a book by one of my heroes, Leonard Reed, who wrote I, Pencil. And so that's a really good book. I think all kids should check out Miraculous Pencil. And like parents, if you want to maybe read I, Pencil as your kids are reading the Miraculous Pencil, I think that could be a really fun family activity and kind of compare what you learned. That could be really fun. So just a suggestion out there. Yeah, Rachel, this was a really, really good topic. I think it's a hot issue. I think there's a lot of sides to it. It's nuanced, as we say. So we will leave it there, and we'll do another episode maybe on a bunch of different ideas on how to fund this out of control government of ours. Yep. But we'll leave it there. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and share with friends. And until next time, we will talk to you later.
See you later.